Rishi Sunak is staring down the barrel of what could be the biggest Tory defeat in over a century. Most of Sunak's first policy initiatives have only appealed to solid Conservative voters and the over 65s. Interestingly, that's the only age demographic where the Tories are leading in the polls. His strategy seems laser focused on shoring up support in Tory seats with big majorities, which are the only places he's visiting. But here's where things start to unravel. Sunak's proposal for national service for over 18s went down like a lead balloon amongst most of the population. The exception? Aged ex-service personnel. But even any potential gains with this small group were negated when he decided to cut short his visit to France during the D-Day commemoration. Then there's his latest appeal to the Tory base, limiting welfare and sickness benefits. Most people in work value their right to take days off when they're sick, especially where the trade union movement has established it as a norm with sickness without loss of pay. It's a different story for the rich and super rich, Sunak's core supporters, who cheer him on. But most workers aren't going to take kindly to being told we have a sick note culture keeping people away from work. If anything, too many workers go to work even when they're unwell. And then came Nigel Farage, like an exocet missile hitting the Tory party. Farage has announced he's contesting Clacton for Reform UK, causing quite the stir. Some polls are now showing the Tories only a few percentage points ahead of Reform UK, with talk of a potential crossover moment where the Tories might even slip below them. There's no doubt Reform UK will siphon off a lot of Tory votes. Whilst it's too soon to suggest, as Farage is boasting, that Reform UK is now the official opposition, many Tory MPs are definitely looking over their shoulders. Sunak is so unloved by his own MPs, especially those on the right, that they're already discussing their own manifesto should Sunak's fall flat. Looking further ahead, especially after a potential Tory demolition in the polls, it's likely that the party's rump will become dominated by the right wing and move towards Reform UK. Suella Braverman has already called for the Tories to welcome Farage and unite the right. Reform UK, originally created as the Brexit Party, has positioned itself to the far right of the Tory party. It's literally a private Farage-owned limited company. This explains how Farage was able to suddenly take over the leadership and declare himself a candidate in Clacton. Farage portrays himself as a man of the people, but don't be fooled. He's a reactionary and a threat to workers' living standards, possibly even more than the Tories. He's clever with his rhetoric, like attacking Sunak for ducking out of the D-Day events, saying Sunak didn't understand what it means to people, but Farage fails to mention his own privileged background and millionaire status. Farage's policies are even more to the right than the Tories. He opposes human rights laws and the NHS in favour of a US-style health system. Above all, he'll use migration and the plight of asylum seekers to divide workers along ethnic and racial lines. Despite the net positive effect of migration on the economy, Reform UK has nothing to offer on the issues workers care about most: the NHS, housing, low pay and services. When the Tory party is decimated in the polls, we'll likely see a realignment of British right-wing politics. With the Tory right and Reform UK merging, Jacob Rees-Mogg has already hinted at this, saying there's much the Tories and Reform UK have in common and suggesting they should work together. This merger seems to be Farage's long-term strategy. The collapse of Tory support is fundamentally down to the biggest hit on living standards for generations. While the rich have gotten richer, the majority are poorer, with millions of working households struggling just to stand still. Scandal after scandal has plagued the government, from the post office debacle to corruption around COVID contracts. The Guardian asked, could this be the end of the Conservative Party as we know it? And the answer seems to be a resounding yes. We're likely to see a new political formation take shape, more akin to right-wing populist parties in Europe or Trump's Republican Party. The Labour Party needs to face up to this threat. The rise of right-wing, nationalist, populist parties in Europe is a warning to the Labour movement. Dismissing all right-wing voters as bigots is a mistake. The support for populism stems from a gut feeling among workers that the system is failing them. They see decisions made by remote bureaucrats far above their heads with no say in what happens to them. This feeling is compounded by the unavailability of genuinely affordable housing, the state of the NHS, education and public services. Populist parties build their support on these fears, diverting attention from the real culprits, the rich and the super rich, to scapegoat like asylum seekers and minority groups. Reform UK will turn the poll into a vote on immigration, backed by the gutter press like the Mail, the Sun, and the Telegraph. Labour must oppose these ideas on a class basis, not on Reform UK's terms. They should address the lack of safe routes for asylum seekers and the real causes of workers' social problems. British politics will increasingly resemble that of France, Italy, and Germany, where a hard right party uses migration and ethnic division as a spear point against organised Labour. This is a challenge the Labour movement must tackle head on. Under Keir Starmer's leadership, this seems unlikely. But socialists must fight for a Labour Party that advances real socialist policies to tackle the housing crisis, low pay, and the NHS's decline. These are the policies that can undermine the racists and xenophobes in the Conservative and Reform UK parties. The warning from the recent European parliamentary elections is clear. If a Labour administration offers only more austerity, it will fuel the rise of the British populist right. Workers' natural tolerance and solidarity depend on a Labour movement that actively works in their favour. Labour must challenge the wealthy and the entire capitalist class and represent to address workers' social and economic problems. That's the way to combat the divisions sown by Reform UK or its future incarnations. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to our channel. Visit the website at www.lefthorizons.com, subscribe to the newsletter, and we will see you next time.